Good.
Ready when you are, Sunshine.
All right. Well, welcome back for another episode of 217 South Mills.
Brought to you by Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin. It is my honor to have my friend Dave Sparger on. Dave was a football player back in the 80s for the Wisconsin Badgers and a lineman. So I thought what a great opportunity to have Dave on here, talk about his experiences and kind of correlate it to ours. So Dave, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
Appreciate you having here. So people, I know who you are. Bill just met you, but I don't think people in the world know who you are. So give me just a little background, where you're from, where you grew up, etc.
Well, I was actually born in Menominee, so right up the road a little bit, as my dad was the head football coach at UW Stout.
Oh, nice.
So he was the head football coach there, and then he ended up taking a job down in Madison as the conference athletic director or the commissioner for the whole state university conference. So the Stout, Stevens Point, Eau Claire, that whole big conference. And he was actually the athletic director or commissioner of that whole conference for 25 years. Oh. So what that ended up doing is actually moving us down to Madison, and we decided to move into Sun Prairie. So I actually started first grade down in Sun Prairie and made a living down there growing up, and went to Sun Prairie High School and played football and basketball and baseball for them. And then I got recruited, obviously, to continue my football career, and that's when I chose Wisconsin. Back in 1983 was my first year with the Badgers, and played there until 86. And so those 4 years was my tenure down there with the Badgers.
So tell me about your recruiting. Like, who were you recruited by? What was the process like back then? Because me and Bill have talked about our recruiting process, but I'd love to know yours.
Yeah, back then I think it's the same. You only had 5 visits. I'm not sure if that's...
Yep. Yeah, it's the same for us.
So we had the 5 visits, and I went to, obviously, Wisconsin, went to Iowa, Notre Dame, Michigan State, and Minnesota. I was kind of that Midwest guy, you know, and real close with my family and stuff. So obviously I wanted to stay close enough where they could take in the games. And so I went to those 5 visits. And when it was all said and done, it was really between Iowa and Wisconsin. Really fell in love with Iowa City, that small town atmosphere for a big college. Yep. So I kind of fell in love with that a little bit. And the guy recruiting me was phenomenal. He was at everything I went to. And if he wasn't at a game that I was doing or playing, he sent somebody. So it was either basketball or baseball. I had an Iowa guy there watching me. And it was just, it was obviously hard to turn them down when they get that much effort into you. Right. But I grew up actually being a Badger fan, as my dad had season tickets. So we actually had, I think it was Double F, was the upper deck. Oh, wow. And so growing up, he and I would always go into the Badger games. We would meet in Sun Prairie at McGovern's, hop on the bus, cruise into Madison, watch the games, watch all the action, hop back on that bus and cruise back into Sun Prairie and be home by, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock at night. And every Saturday, anytime there was a home game, my dad and I, or as I got older, myself and a friend, would always hop on that bus and cruise in and watch the Badgers, And again, my high school career, they really kind of turned that program around to where they were relevant and a lot of fun to watch.
So growing up, tell us about the Badgers. How were they? Were they dismal back then? Was there sparks of like, hey, this is a program that's kind of coming up here, or what was? Because the growing theme is the Badgers were horrible for so long until Barry Alvarez showed up. That was kind of the overall persona of the state, or what people perceive as Wisconsin football.
Yeah, and back in the early 80s, the head coach was Dave McClain. And those who go down there now can see that the Dave McClain facility, the add-on down there for the workouts is in his honor. And he came in with his staff and actually started to turn that program around. It was 82 that Timmy Crumry, Vandenboom, Greenwood, that crew actually went to the Garden State Bowl. And they had 7 wins that year and, had big wins over Michigan. I think that might have been the year they beat Michigan and Ohio State the same year. And that was like the shining moment for Badger football. It was kind of like, we are relevant. Yeah. We're here now.
Absolutely.
And it wasn't, you'll go, 4-7 or 3-8 like you always do. It was like, that was the team that really kind of put Wisconsin on the map as a contender and a player in the league. Then my freshman year coming in, we actually had Randy Wright at quarterback. Oh. Al Toon is one of our wide receivers.
Nice.
Yeah. Al
Good
Toon
company.
was just phenomenal and a great guy. Both those guys, as seniors, went out of the way kind of to take the freshmen in and kind of put me under their wings a little bit, which was really nice. Those guys during 2 days at the seminary out there, they were great. They kind of always made sure those freshmen knew what to do and kind of got things going. But those guys, again, let us, that year, and we had a good season that season. I think another 7-win, but we didn't go to a bowl game until my sophomore year. And again, that was when some of these guys that the Ozzie, Dave Milkey, we had Kevin Belcher at left tackle, we had Danny Turk at center, and Jeff Dellenbach at right tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Belcher, Dellenbach, and Danny Turk all went in the draft after that season, and we ended up winning the 7 games, went to the Hall of Fame Bowl down in Birmingham, Alabama, where we lost on a botched field goal.
Who'd you play?
Kentucky.
Oh, Kentucky.
Yeah, we were down, I think it was 20-19, 5 seconds left in the game. We're lining up for about a 37-yard field goal.
Yep.
Todd Greger, he's automatic. We're going to win this thing. Right. Unbelievable. Snap comes back, and the holder drops it. And we're just like, did that just happen? Did that really just happen? I mean, it was just like one of those freak things where it was a good snap, and he just mishandled it, couldn't get it up, and that was it. Game over. And it was just like, we had this. We did everything possible to win a bowl game for the Badgers, and it fell apart. But, but again, it was another 7-win season. Going into that next year, our junior year, had to replace a lot. Again, that whole offensive line was basically gone, but had some good linemen coming in, and that's when Paul Gruber, Mr. number 4 pick in the draft there in 87, I think, 87, 88, whatever it was, he stepped in at the left tackle, was phenomenal. We had other guys, Rodney Lasso at center. We had Glenn Derby at a guard, and all 3 of those guys ended up going pro.
Nice.
So they ended up stepping into that role. Struggled a little bit that year. We went 5-6. But again, it didn't really get away from you. 5-6, a couple of more things here and there, a couple bounces. We could have had a 7-win season, so you still felt good about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And then, the story that, I've talked a lot about, Joe, is when going into my senior year, we were going, that winter workout season, spring ball was about to roll around, is when the head coach, Dave McClain, actually worked out in the training room on the bike, got up, went to the sauna, and died of a heart attack in the sauna. That was our head coach going into my senior year that passed away. Well, it just sent shockwaves through the whole program. People were scrambling. What do you do? The athletic department's like, well, do we have to go outside and find a head coach, or we try to keep this in-house? And they felt the best thing at that time, obviously, would keep it in-house because of, again, enough success with everybody. So Jim Hillis, who was our defensive coordinator, stepped up as the head coach. And again, we liked him. We really did. We were very fond of him, very personal guy. And we were like, yeah, we want him to be the head coach. Right. And then we came into that year, and it just was not good. It just struggled, and it got ugly. We lost 3 out of our first 4 non-conference games.
Ooh.
I mean, at Hawaii, at Las Vegas. I think we beat Northern Illinois barely. It wasn't even a blowout or anything like that. And then we lost at Wyoming. So we knew, like, this is going to be a struggle.
Right.
I think we knocked off Northwestern and one other conference team. That was it. And then it just was not a good season. And then that's when the athletic department was like, well, this isn't going the direction we wanted to. Right. We're going to go outside. We're going to bring in a whole new staff, a whole new group, and start over. And then that's when I was like, well, I'm good. I've had my 4 years, a lot of injuries. I've, struggled through a lot of things. So I'm good. My 4 years, I'm good. And then let somebody else come in, and I don't have to deal with it, that kind of stuff. So, right. Yeah, and that was, like I said, it was a good series there from, early 80s until about the mid-80s. And then when the Don Morton era started, it got ugly in a hurry.
So am I right or wrong? That's the era where people brag more about the band than the football team. That's what we always do.
Absolutely.
As younger guys coming in.
Kids wouldn't actually show up for the game, the student section. Yeah. They would wait till like the 3rd or 4th quarter, show up, and then party with the band. Because it was the 5th quarter, right?
Right.
We still all know it as the 5th quarter.
Right.
Exactly. And I mean, they went from 82,000 people watching you play to 36, 32,000, and you'd see the stadium, all the open seats, and, and then just to go out there and get smoked, 1 win a season, maybe 2 through his era. And right. I mean, it was not good. And fortunately they caught on that in a hurry. I think, it's like, okay, this was not a good move. And then they went out there, started looking, and did that nationwide search. And Alvarez was on the list, Joe. And I told you that Alvarez was at Iowa when I was getting recruited. Then he went to Notre Dame. And when I saw his name on the list, I was like, that's the guy. So that's the guy that's got the connections
Mhm.
nationwide.
Yep.
That you can't just go Midwest anymore, right?
Exactly,
Everybody was recruiting all over the nation, and so Wisconsin can't just live on Wisconsin players, and Illinois players. It's like, no, you got to go nationwide.
Right.
Find those guys from Jersey or wherever.
And those pricks from Pennsylvania, especially.
And then right out east. I mean, unfortunately, you got to grab a few of those guys.
Stellar athletes and scholars.
This is scholars. Okay, now we're making impression. Did you just say
scholars?
Scholars?
I have a degree on my wall. I have a paper degree on my wall.
Yeah, I'm sure you do.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I do. But to take it back, in all seriousness, to take it back for a second, we were there almost, 10 to 15 years after you were, and it was still talked about Coach McClain passing away. So, I mean, I just can't even fathom dealing with something like that. I mean, the hit that had to take to the program and the weight on you guys, just absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, because the day it happened, we just scattered, right? I mean, we weren't in spring ball yet.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was that in-between stage where we got done with winter workouts, all those 6 a.m. workouts in the morning. But yet spring ball hadn't started. So it was that little kind of dead time there, and everybody's just kind of stopping in and going. And really, we didn't meet much. And then all of a sudden, I'd actually gone back to Sun Prairie to do some baseball coaching with the high school team, this kind of thing. And all of a sudden, I no sooner got there, and I'm getting a phone call, and I'm going, well, what's up? And they're going, come back to the facility now. I'm like, well, what's going on? No, just come back to the facility now, right now. I was like, well, I don't have any clue what's going on here. I'm supposed to just go back. And so I'm like, well, I got to go back. And off you go, and you get back to the facility, and it was just dead silent. I mean, it was, nobody knew what was going on. Everybody was just sitting there, in our room with all the good seats, and we're just kind of hanging out talking. And then that's when all of a sudden, Jim Hillis walks in, and, the ADD, all those kind of people, Jerry Fishbane, who was head of recruiting and stuff. And, they just kind of stood up in front and just said, hey, this is what's gone down here. And, we just wanted to pass this on, but we didn't want it to go public until we got the team together. We wanted the team to make sure everybody got back and knew about it before it hit the news that night. And then it broke finally that night. So, yeah.
It's almost like a series of unfortunate events because you were working towards building something and you had success, which it's really hard to recruit when you are not competing the way you should. And I almost said terrible, but again, I caution using that because college football is freaking hard.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So anybody who says oh, that team is terrible, I don't think you understand the actual time and effort it goes into football in college.
Well, and you say a team's not good. You know what? They're still putting the exact same hours on the field, in the weight room at 6 a.m. Yep. They're doing everything that 12-0 team just did.
Absolutely.
The difference is they just do it better.
Yep.
There's such a fine line between a program let's say right now, between Michigan and in Illinois, right now. It's just a fine line of 3 or 4 type players, or who executes a little bit better, who's just a little bit cleaner on how they do things. And so, I agree with you 100%. I mean, if you're playing D1, you're grinding. I mean, I don't care if you're 0-12 or 12-0, everybody's grinding their butt off.
And hard to grind when you are not. Your team record hasn't been good for a while. So hard for you to get those. I'm going to go out there and get a top-ranked offensive lineman, a linebacker, etc. Unless, luckily, a lot of in-state guys are faithful, and I think Coach Alvarez closed the border, basically, to put a wall around Wisconsin. And but hard to recruit and hard to bring in good players because what are you basing it on? Hey, we're building right now. You can be on the foundation because that's the only thing you have to build on is we're going to be the foundation and we're going to start, moving forward. But just tough.
Yeah, and Dave McClain did that too. You talk about building a border around Wisconsin. Dave McClain did that. We talked about all the Everest and Wausau guys, those big linemen especially. I think my freshman year we brought in 12 in-state guys. And again, it was 12 out of the top 15 that were being recruited all went to Wisconsin. Why did we go? Tim Kremrey.
Yep.
Vandenboom, Greenwood. And it was look what they just did.
Absolutely.
They got us on. This is a really good program. They went to a bowl game. We're going to jump on this. We're going to keep it going. We're going to turn, we're going to be the next group that, wins 7-8 games, go to bowl games, make it consistent and, stuff like that. So, it was quite a time that you were excited to be there. That's for sure.
Yeah,
well, I think go ahead.
Before you speak, I just want to say this with the biggest smile on my face. It is freaking hilarious that Bill Ferrario is not waterboarding you with words he always does.
I'm trying to be polite.
So
He's chomping at the bit over there.
I love this conversation. And as a matter of fact, I'm just going to turn towards you. I'm going to turn your mic off, Bill, because this is like probably like one of the best interviews I've ever had because I haven't heard you say much of anything. It's freaking amazing.
Well, you and I have talked all the time, right? Every time you and I get together, we talk football in Wisconsin, so you and I are used to this.
I'm trying to be respectful. I'm trying to listen to the story.
Bill, I'm all yours. Let's do this.
I got to say something else. Hey, how does it feel, Coach? Huh? When you cut off Coach Alvarez because you had to talk, remember that?
Mistakes happen.
Oh, yeah, mistakes.
Okay? It was a mental mistake. I was going to say, like Joe and I talk a lot about football players, and you're in this category where civilians that didn't play football don't understand the 1, 2, 3, 5, 7 plays a season could change that outcome on the win-loss record. That just 3 or 5 plays, you could have 3 more wins or 3 more losses. And that's where, to your point about players working hard and putting the grind in, it just matters. Like everyone's doing the same thing week in and week out, and some schools have more talent than others, and end up getting. And
in his case, the freaking holder dropped the ball. Like as an offensive lineman, I love my kicker when he's on. I love my holders when he's on, and they can go and have their part-time practice and not get the crap beat out of them every day as long as you're consistent. As an offensive lineman, I've been in a fist fight for how long through all the practice, through the game, and you shit the bed on the freaking hold.
Yeah.
Like.
And we had some phenomenal kickers during our time, which we respected the hell out of them.
Yeah.
But when I heard that story, boy, did I get pissed off.
Just instant rage, right? I sat there, shook my head. I'm just like,
it is funny because like you've got one job to do.
Yes.
This is what you are doing. This is it.
Yeah.
But again, it was just one of those freak things. But it's just it happens.
One thing that you touched on early on, you talked about seminary.
Yep.
So we had an episode on seminary and how hard it was. And I would love to hear you because I haven't heard any of your seminary experience. I think it'd be great to hear.
Oh boy, if I can bring that up. You guys got to remember now, this has been 40 years. Okay. 40 years. I'm feeling the football issue with the noggin. The memory is kind of fading on me. The biggest things I remember is it was frickin' 90 with 100% humidity. I swear to God, all 4 years, it could not be any worse weather-wise. We would go down there. I didn't have a room to myself until senior year. Always had to share a room with somebody.
Okay.
It wasn't until you were senior that you got your own room. No air conditioners until your senior year. And if you were a senior that had one of those special rooms, you actually got an air conditioner for that. But I just remember grinding out those AM practices, followed by the PM practices. And in between, we had specialties, which I was a long snapper, so I was all for that too. But there'd be we'd come off the field and you'd have these huge buckets with ice water sitting there. And you have to get out, step into the buckets, right? You have to step into the bucket, sit there for a couple minutes, and then hop out, next guy in, just trying to get those legs to recover. How about the sled going up the hill? Did you guys do that?
No, but I want to hear
up the hill.
It was the lower. Did you have 2 fields, right? Lower and upper? Oh, yeah. No, our thing was we took that I think it's 5-man sled, right? Yep. I don't think it was 7. I think it was 5. We took that 5-man sled. It was on wheels, and we would have to drive it up the hill to the second field. And then he'd have the brake. He'd have the brake to bring it back down. Next 5 up, and let's go. We're driving it up the hill. That was one of those grinders that was like, whew, you're feeling this in the legs by the time you're done.
Oh, absolutely.
So yeah.
Well, I even look like just hearing a little bit about your past and with baseball. I grew up a baseball player, then started playing football. And I said, I used to love the smell of fresh cut grass. To me, that was like opening day of baseball.
Yeah.
You start playing baseball. When I started going to seminary, to this day, when I smell fresh cut grass, it makes me sick to my stomach.
It took all of it out of it. Yeah.
I lost
I used to, not anymore.
Yeah,
I hear you there. That's no doubt about it. I think that's why I kind of let that go. Yeah. Like I've let that just fade away. Exactly. Don't remember anything of 2-a-days. Because boy, was it exciting when you got back on campus.
Yes.
How easy is this? We just went from basically 3 practices a day to just 1. You go in there, you have your film, you go out there and you practice about 2:15, you're done. It's like, oh my gosh.
Shower.
This is where it's at.
Sleep in your own freaking bed. Like how amazing.
Yeah.
Your equipment's not soaked with sweat.
Oh, yeah. Every time you put it on. Didn't matter when you put it on. Right?
Exactly.
Every time.
Every time just soaking wet.
It's amazing how no matter what generation, it's the exact same thing. Like I said, you just met Bill, but I'm looking at his face. He's just like, he can.
Football's football.
Yeah, football is football no matter what, no matter when you play. It's amazing. Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane, Altoona, Wisconsin. Stop on by and try our drink of the month, the Brambleberry. Features our white coffee in 3 of our berry flavors. Great tasting, give you that pick-me-up from the caffeine. Cabin Coffee Altoona. So let me ask you this. Was the green pool at Seminary? Did you have the toxic green pool?
There was a pool at Seminary, like a
swimming pool.
Concrete inside of Seminary, a swimming pool that we got to go in maybe once a week.
Yeah.
If we had good practices. Well, it was obviously there.
Right.
I would think it was there.
No, it was there. It was there,
it.
but that was actually used only for rehab.
Okay.
That's what we used it for. Guys that needed to do stuff.
So our joke was it was probably your era, the last time they put chemicals in it. But when we got the okay from Coach Alvarez, go ahead, jump in the pool. We take our pads and helmet off, jump in with everything else on.
Yeah,
it was taped up.
And then make sure you rinse off when you get out.
Shower well.
You know what? That swimmer itch. You know what? That swimmer's itch. Crazy. Man, I just can't fathom playing football in the 80s, especially like how you came in there. And luckily, you were a local kid just down the road from Sun Prairie, which was awesome for you. Was that a contributing factor to you going to Wisconsin ultimately?
Absolutely. Like I said, I went to the games with my dad. Went with friends every time there was a home game, and I kind of had a special bond with my father. It was kind of one of those things. He actually worked right on campus.
Oh, how cool!
So his office was just on Monroe Street, up like 2 blocks up on Monroe Street. So I would every Wednesday. We would always make sure my schedule worked around, but we'd always meet at noon on Wednesday at the Hofbrau is that what they're called? Something right there on Regent Street.
No,
there was a great burger place on Regent Street, and
that ain't there no more.
So he and I would always meet for lunch every Wednesday. We talk about the week and what's going on with football and everything outside for me and kind of thing. And so it was just kind of he and I. One of those quality times where meet up with Dad, we're having lunch together, and then I'd go over to the stadium because it was right there.
Right.
So I just walk over to the stadium and get ready for practice on Wednesday, things like that. So yeah, it was pretty simple for me to come up with Wisconsin as my place. And again, and the guys that I played in the Shrine game with, the South, those guys were all going there. The Paul Grubers, what was Johnson's first name? Drawing a blank name. Boy, was he an athlete, receiver. Couldn't stay healthy though. Then again, all these other guys that were on the South team, there's about 3 or 4 or 5 of us that were all committed. We're like, let's do this. Let's all. So it was kind of that. If you go, I go. Scott Benchwall, he was one of them. He was East Side. His kids actually, both his boys, the Benchwalls, both his boys played there. That's his dad is the one that played with me.
Oh,
okay.
So you're familiar with the name, right?
Yes, Scotty Benchwall has 2 boys go there. Yeah, and then now Todd Nelson's his boy is playing. He's the left tackle right now.
Right.
So I played with him also. Those guys were over there by the Milwaukee area, Oconomowoc and someplace else. I can't remember where Scotty was right now. Top of my head, he was over there too. So we just all said, hey, let's do this. And this is before social media. Even.
That's what's crazy.
We couldn't text each other or do whatever kind of thing.
Exactly.
But we simply saw each other in all these visits. And then they were smart.
Yep.
Wisconsin was smart and said, let's bring you all in together.
Yeah.
And so when we all got together at Wisconsin, it was, hey, let's talk, let's do this, so yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah, I had a very similar experience in college, in high school, because we had quite a few scholarship athletes that came out of the Valley. So it was me and Ross Kalaji and Jason Godorzy, Doring, Josh Dickerson. So we had a pretty good crew of people that were going to Wisconsin, and that made my decision much easier. And I was a Wisconsin kid, so I wasn't going far anyway. I was recruited heavily by the state to the west of us that I don't really want to mention. So
across the river.
Yeah. So, so it was a super simple, easy decision for me. And then Bill comes over from Pennsylvania, and we end
up hitting it off. That you brought up that state across the river. When you guys played Minnesota, did you have wins against Minnesota? I'm assuming the Axe was.
We were either 2-2 or 1-3, to be honest. So I think we were 2-2.
Here's a question we always ask, and we bring up to other linemen. Did you ever carry the Axe after a game?
I did not, because I know one of the years was my freshman year. We won because I actually got a chance to play as a freshman in the D line, and that was one of the games I actually got in and played about 20 snaps. Nice. But of course, freshman lineman, I'm not touching the Axe. that goes with the seniors, and they got to run around with it. That's fine. I was like, I'll wait my turn, that kind of stuff.
I think during our era, we won every year that we played Minnesota, which we're grateful for.
Yep.
But every year we won, we always ended on offense, either with a field goal or a touchdown or whatever. And I remember my first year, I think it was 97, I was running like crazy, huffing and puffing, couldn't catch up to the walk on that has the guys that are on the sidelines that have the axe. And did you play in the Dome, in Minnesota?
Yep.
And I said it was like 3 flights of stairs you had to walk up to get to the locker room. And I just said, forget it. I'm not chasing. And then after that first year, we still finished on offense every game. And I was just like, I'll see it in the locker room. Like, I'm not even going to try. I'm so tired right now. I'm not even going to try.
My head hurts. My body hurts. I'm not going to run after the axe from some guy who's fresh, who's carrying the axe, who's 130 pounds.
Yeah, and like, taking off running with it, and celebrating with it. And you're all like, dude, no, not going to happen.
You looked at in our era, all these pictures, like, so there's the after us. There's the pictures like Joe Thomas with the axe or so-and-so with the axe. But during the mid to late 90s, it's like, who's that? Who's number 38? Somebody having the axe chopping the goalpost down. There's a bunch of linemen 40 yards behind.
Third string safeties running around with it out there. Yeah, there you go.
And the holder's got it. Freaking holder.
Oh, yeah.
No, that's awesome. Well, very cool. So after let's find out more about you. After graduating from Madison, tell us what you've been doing ever since, and let's fill in the rest of the blanks.
Yeah, well, I was fortunate. As I finished up, I was going with a teaching degree, and I finished up my senior year, and I actually student taught at Madison Memorial.
Oh, nice.
And so the famous Wally Schessel down there, just in that era, was famous for Madison Memorial football, and I coached with him that year when I was doing all my student teaching. And I got done, and I found out about a job opportunity here in Eau Claire. And so I put in for it and got an interview. So I came up, and my first interview was actually for the middle school. And I didn't get that one. And so, but they passed my name down to the elementary. And sure enough, I got hired to do elementary phi ed, which, of course, when you're 22, 23, that's fine. You got all that energy. You'll do that stuff. Right. And the kids always thought it was just a human jungle gym. It was like, hang on to the arms, climb all over, like, hey, he's here. But the funny thing was, we actually only had one school per day. So I would actually travel to an elementary school on Monday, a different one on Tuesday, a different one Wednesday, as we were called coordinators. So we would coordinate the phi ed programs with the classroom teacher.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, that was shambles. I mean, obviously the classroom teachers didn't want to do it. And so you'd come back the next week and you go, well, how were the other 2 lessons that I gave you? Yeah, we didn't get to those. We had a little extra reading we had to do. We had to do, lists. Or
I brought the TV card in and we watched a movie.
We watched The Running Man or something like that instead, yeah. But it was funny is that one guy, a teacher over, I don't never forget, Robbins Elementary, was 6th grade. This is before they made the move to middle school stuff. He actually had his kids go out and run a mile.
Oh.
Every time they had phi ed, I wasn't there, so they're not going to play games and do anything fun. We're going to go jog the mile. And so, needless to say, when I showed up at Robbins, you could hear the cheers. I mean, they were like, we're not running a mile with our guy. This is awesome. So I ended up doing that for 2 years. And then that's when Eau Claire made the big swing to middle schools, moved 6th grade up to the middle school. 9th grade went to high school. And so that change, that allowed me to shift into the middle school. I did a couple years there. And then my last 28 years was actually at Memorial teaching high school phi ed. And I coached football right out of the gate. I did coach football from 88 to 92. And I did girls basketball from 90 to 99. Oh. And then I did baseball. I was the head baseball coach from 2008 to 2016.
Nice.
So I was kind of, always involved.
Joe brought this up earlier. He'd mentioned that you would coach baseball. So even the girls basketball and baseball, how did that transition? Like football is an obvious.
Well, I'm like you though. I was a baseball nut. Okay. I mean, I loved baseball. If somebody would have come up to me and said, "We'll give you a full ride for baseball or a full ride for football," I think I would have taken baseball, to be honest with you. I did not have the temperament, and I think most people that know me, I did not have that temperament to be an outstanding football player. I just didn't have that switch, like when you cross the lines, to be an absolute, I can't use the words, obviously.
You can.
We'll say prick. Okay, well, keep it kind of clean there. Yeah. I mean, I had my moments where I just, obviously you have your moments where you just like, all right, this is enough, and you kind of get there. But I always felt like to excel at that level, you just had to be able to be mean and nasty every time you stepped on the field.
Right.
especially as a lineman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we're not talking skill players, right?
Right.
You just run around, get fast, and use your hands, and
Right.
When you're in the interior, and every single snap, there's a collision. There's just that massive collision and chaos in front of you, and to not get whooped up, and then again, you've got to have that in you, and I couldn't maintain that. That just wasn't my nature. So again, I think and then of course I found out later that Wichita State was actually looking at me for baseball.
Oh, really?
And I was like, oh, really? Stuff like that. Dang it. But it never got to me because my head football coach took everything, and he was like, well, he's not going to play baseball. He's going to play football. And Christ, he's got all these teams after him, whatever. So, yeah, but I played summer baseball until I finally moved up here. But every summer, even during the football stuff, I was back at Sun Prairie playing home talent ball and hitting around. And
I was going to tell him my funny story
should
about
definitely
baseball.
tell him that.
I still want to hear about the girls' basketball when I'm done, but all of us with our heads, I'll forget if I don't bring it up. So when I went on my visit, prior to being offered by Wisconsin, University of Buffalo was my biggest school that offered me. They were 1AA at the time, about to go Division I, I think would have been our junior year of college. In Wisconsin, I'm assuming, lost a scholarship athlete where they had a scholarship available at the last second. I go on my visit, and once I got the call to go on the visit, all of a sudden my confidence went through the roof. I was like, this is going to happen, whatever. Coach Hugh, I got recruited as a D lineman, so our O-line coach was my recruiting host out there that weekend. And he basically said, like, you better have an answer when Coach Alvarez talks to you. If he's going to offer you, better have an answer. And I'm like, okay, I'll talk to my dad tonight just to go over any nuts and bolts with my dad to make sure I feel confident. And I looked at Coach Hubert and I said, hey, I got a question for you. Do you mind if I play baseball as well and be like a dual sport athlete? He goes, it's not a problem. I go, should I clear that with Coach Alvarez when I talk to him tomorrow? He goes, no, don't worry about it. You're good. It wasn't until I got back to Pennsylvania and I talked to somebody who was big in college baseball. And I said, yeah, they're going to let me play both baseball and football. He goes, they don't have a baseball program. I was like, you got to be. He looked me dead in the eye.
That was classic.
He goes, yeah, you can do both. Yeah, it's no problem at all. So I accepted it. Yeah,
it was late or 90s.
I think it was late 80s or early 90s.
Right around that era, because Eau Claire lost theirs too. Now they got their back. But yeah, it was, you're right. That was just the era that all of a sudden Wisconsin baseball, it was Title IX, to be honest, right? Title IX kind of had to move stuff along in order to make it equal and things like that. But that's clear. That's great. Not a problem. You can play all you want to there.
You can play whatever you want. Yeah. You don't have to ask anybody. You got permission. But back to you with high school coaching. So how did girls basketball come into play? Was there just an opening and you had time,
exactly. Or? No, yeah. Mike Reitz was the head coach, and he's a Hall of Famer. And he, again, young guy, 23, 24. He needed a coach. He didn't all of a sudden he didn't have a JV coach, and he was just like, you'll be in the gym with me, so I can teach you. We'll work together. And I said, well, I've done a little bit of coaching basketball, not a lot. And obviously growing up in the YMCA, I did things and stuff like that, and I played it, through high school and stuff like that. And he's like, yeah, no, we need somebody. Like, how about it? And I said, all right, I'll do it. Not really knowing what I was getting into. And so, with Coach Reitz, he's phenomenal. And to this day, he's one of my idols, and just how he handled coaching basketball with young ladies was just amazing on how he handled the difference and stuff like that. And just, he was phenomenal. Learned from him, and I did it for 10 years. And then finally, when enough of my kids came rolling along, it was like, okay, something's got to go. I don't have time for my own kids. And I remember being on the bus, and it was when Steve Smith actually took over. He's a good friend of mine. He took over the girls program, and I'm on the bus on a Saturday morning at 7 a.m. going over to DC Everest for a girls game at noon or 11, whatever it was. And I turned to him and said, listen, my boys are playing hockey this morning, and I'm not there. Yeah, this is my last year. Yeah, I said I would much rather be with my kids and somebody else's kids now. I said that was the line. It was just like, all right, I've had enough, stuff like that.
So. Well, one of the things Joe and I talk a lot about that I'm hearing out of you is, like we said, this podcast is about football, but also about life as well, and how much skills and goals and determination football taught us that carries over to life. And I hear a lot of that with you talking about the Hall of Fame coaches that you coach with. How much of that did you take from them? Like, I could just hear the appreciation in your voice when you're talking about what you learned from them. Like, I guess, what was that like? And do you see that the same as us, that football carries, if you could do it on the football field, you can learn leadership, determination, setting goals, all that.
Without a doubt. I mean, I'm not. It doesn't even have to really relate to just football. I mean, we're not talking about just football, right? Sports. And I always find it a shame when people go, well, why do they spend so much time on this, or why do they spend so much money on this, or why, what is sports? It's like you don't get it. Then if you question what athletics does to young adults, then you don't get it. And obviously you didn't partake in it yourself, because if you can't see what it does as far as that maturity, the goal setting, the leadership qualities. I mean, you see it everywhere. When you see a good leader, all you got to do is, what sport did you play? That's all you're going to tell.
Absolutely.
You can tell they carry themselves, right? And just those things, yeah. And I think my 30-some years of coaching that I did, between all the sports and all the coaching that I've done and the teaching in Phi Ed and those kind of things, it all relates back to my father being a coach, growing up around coaches, being, at Wisconsin with coaching, again, tremendous coaches they had back then. My student teaching, being with this guy, and early in my career being with this coach, and how that just kind of helps mold and shape your coaching theory or philosophy and stuff like that, and what you do with it. And again, I consider myself very successful with just reaching kids and just being there for them. I think to this day that any one of my former athletes would be willing to give me a call or come back and visit if they needed something. I see guys around town now, they're like, hey, Spargs, how you doing, coach? And stuff like that. I'm like, what year were you? It's just like, it's been too long, dude. I know you were the 90s or something like that. But it's just awesome, right? When they come up and now, of course, one of the reasons I had to get out of teaching is I'm now getting their kids. That really made me feel old when they're going like, yeah, you had my mom and dad in class, or you coached my mom in basketball, you coached my dad in football. I'm like, yeah, I did. You're right.
Absolutely.
But again, I was just starting out. I wasn't that old.
Absolutely.
I was just a newbie. I was like, I've just started teaching. So,
brand new out of the box.
It's a blast. Like I said, even now, just to see their kids coming through Memorial, and I've coached their mom and dad or whatever. It's fun. It's just a lot of fun to look back.
It's very cool. And you talked about, like, you can tell who was an athlete by their leadership. And I can tell you that in this coffee shop, I've incorporated just about every freaking thing I can possibly can about football in life in general. Now, I've not taken all great things from everybody. I had amazing coaches, but I had some horseshit coaches too. Of
course. We all have. Yeah, absolutely.
And then what you do is you're like, this is why I'm not going to do this, and you curtail, like, all your adversities, all your frustrations, all like the disappointments and the stick-to-itiveness, and things aren't working and you can't will it to work, but you sure as hell can't quit because you're the guy. I mean, and I'm talking about the coffee shop here, but I mean, I experienced all of those facets of sports and football in these four walls, and but it's worked out really well for me. So,
and one of the great sayings a friend of mine once told me was, you'll see a lot of the athletes who is maybe they're not straight A, right? They might be that B or C type student, not looking at Bill. Might be looking, at the. But you know what? They're the guys that hire the A students.
Correct.
You know what I mean? They're the guys that can lead and do those things, but they can't. And they've got those people to do the dirty work for them that are smarter but can't lead. They're not the guys running the coffee shops or whatever. It's just like, so and I've always remembered that, and I've tried to remember that with my kids too. Like, listen, you don't have to be a straight A. Enjoy your college. Work hard, do the right things. And fortunately for me, all three of my kids were college athletes.
Oh, really?
The two boys went and played baseball big time, and my daughter went down and played volleyball down in Iowa at Central College, which was a D3 program. But again, all three of them went on and played a college sport and were part of that team and the camaraderie and learning what the grind is at the college level.
Absolutely.
And I still, to this day, will see kids getting recruited and looked at the high school. And I want to let them know that it's a lot harder than you think. And at Memorial, we have had several, and I mean several athletes go and they're going to play at D1 or D2 or whatever, and they'll last a year. And they're done. And I just you can see in their makeup, like, you don't get it. You don't get it, the time commitment, everything that you have to do to earn that scholarship.
Well, they're paying today, they see this stuff on social media, and I think that's what kills all three of us here, is like these kids are looking at Instagram at a picture of somebody in college being like, oh, I want to be that guy in the picture, but you don't understand the amount of work. Like the seminary, the waking up at 6 a.m., doing the lifts, doing the runs. And I think they just take that for granted, and shit's hard.
Well, and even now, you look at D2. There's no difference, right?
Yeah.
They're trying to replicate everything D1's doing.
Absolutely.
How about D3?
Yeah.
Guess what? Same thing.
Yep.
Now all of a sudden they're going year round.
Right.
They're trying to do the same thing with just maybe a little lesser skilled athlete, but they don't want to be shortchanged.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. They want their program to be the best it can be. So any limits that they're put on, they're going to push it to the limit. How many days do we get? How many hours do we get?
Yep.
And speaking of that, how much has that changed since we've played? The NCAA putting in limits for practice time.
What is that?
And the number of contact days. Spring ball, 20 days. Fellas, suit up. You are full pad day one, and we're having many insides. We're going 7-on-7 live. We're going to scrimmage at the end live, and we're going to do it 20 days in a row.
So I hope he doesn't listen to this, but a guy I got close with over the last couple of years, or last 10, 15 years, was Jared Abaderis, that played football for the Badgers.
Yeah, the receiver,
And then went to the Packers, and we ended up connecting. And I remember Jared and I talking about Seminary. And he's like, yeah, on day 6, when you had to put the pads on. I go, what do you mean day 6? He goes, well, the first 5 days are just helmets. I go, day 1 was 3 a days, full pads every practice. I'm like,
it was helmet and shoulders for us for the first 3 practices.
And maybe helmet, shoulder, whatever.
Yeah.
But he's helmets.
6.
I'm like, what are you talking
What?
I took my son, and Joe and I did an episode on spring ball. And I took my son probably, 5-6 years ago down to Madison, and he was probably, 8 years old. So I'm prepping him. I'm like, listen, you're going to hear a lot of bad words. There might be fights. I'm saying all the bad stuff that happens at spring ball. We get down there. There's music playing. We walked in while practice had already begun. There's music playing in the McClain Center while they're practicing, which I'm like, is there a radio station here? Like,
is the band practicing?
Yeah, what's going on right now?
Yeah, how does that work?
Then we walk over to I'm like, come on, let's go down to the O-line. And I think Joe Rudolph was the O-line coach, maybe the OC and O-line coach at the time. And I had gotten to know Joe while I was at Wisconsin. We're watching them, and they get done in their O-line drill. And I walk up to Joe. I go, hey, you didn't say the F word once. You didn't say anything derogatory about any kid. Like, what's going on? And he's just like, Bill, it's a different generation of kids. Like, we can't do it. And I'm like, that's when I realized I was like, yeah, I just wouldn't make it as a coach.
Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin. Hey, folks, we serve breakfast and lunch all day long. It doesn't matter what time you come in. We can do breakfast, lunch, we have salads. Your sandwiches are made to order, not just open a cellophane container and put in the microwave. So stop on by Cabin Coffee for the freshest food and coffee you can get.
I tried helping out in Wausau the one time, and I still am friends with the head coach, but I almost got in a fist fight with him. I'm like, you're doing it wrong. Like, my way is the right way. Yeah. You're coaching off in 1950s. It's not the 50s.
Let me tell you how it's supposed to be.
Exactly. And I was just like, you know what? It's your name that goes in the paper. I apologize. I need to step back. And then I started working with kids a little bit one-on-one after that to be able to give back. But also, it was just, it's like, we know how to do things, and it's tough seeing it the other way.
Yeah, that spring ball especially. But now it's down to 15 days instead of 20, I think, right?
Oh.
I think it's 15 days.
You should keep taking it.
And it's like only 10 could be contact day. I mean, full contact.
Crazy.
It's just, I'm just blown away.
Yeah. Where Joe and I said, like, we made the point, our coaches, we truly believe, didn't care if somebody got injured. Because you have enough time to heal up.
Absolutely.
So it's like, he's out with his shoulder, go get surgery.
Great.
He'll be good.
Get more reps for the number 2 guy can get fired up and more reps and get him in there.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt, that's what they were thinking. Like, we're going to go and we're going to see who earns their spot now. Yes. So when we come in the fall, it's already dictated. You have already determined who is first team, second team, and it's done in the spring.
Yeah, absolutely. And Joe and I talk about it. We had, especially as our careers went on, our offensive line, we were the youngest O-line probably in college football in 97. By 99, we were one of the more experienced O-lines. We had Ron Dane in the backfield, who's about to win a Heisman Trophy. We're still going goal line live. Yep. And the only rule we had was we weren't allowed to cut on offense. We couldn't cut a D lineman. But tackle Ron, sack the quarterback. Yep. It's just like nowadays, it's like, we didn't have the black jerseys or whatever color Wisconsin wears for the quarterback. Yeah. But I don't think we had that.
No, we didn't.
It was just like, if you get in the backfield, take them to the ground. Yeah. Sack them. Like, it's just mind-blowing to see how all the – and there is what I say about football with physicalness and toughness, it's like a pendulum. And the pendulum right now is so far towards safety. Yes. Where when we grew up in the 90s, we'd wake up, there was no safety whatsoever. We'd wake up watching ESPN top 10 hits. Yeah. Watching guys snore on the field. Right. And that's how we learned to play football. I go, that pendulum has to come back to the middle.
Well,
it has to at some point, otherwise it's going to be flag football.
Well, and here again, you just brought it up. What's going to change? What's the kickoff doing in the NFL this year?
I just saw that. My son, just showed me that.
Moving
Did you
up
see
to
this or no?
30-yard line or something like that. Yeah, it's
that and the new tackle, the new.
You can't do that. You can't.
Oh yeah, the drop hip.
The drop hip.
Yeah, they're trying to take it away. I don't think they have yet.
Yeah.
But that's the big push, though, right? And then the next guy up was like, so how do we tackle these 235, 6'3" that are coming through in the secondary when he's 5'10", 180?
Yeah. One of the best lines I heard. My last team I played for in the pros was Carolina, and we had Julius Peppers was a defensive end. And every year in NFL camp, NFL official comes in to update you on the new rules. Yep. And they basically go through the rules of tackling. And Julius is sitting in the back of the room, raises his hand. The official's like, go ahead, Julius. He stands up. He's like, so I can't hit the quarterback in the head? The umpire goes, no. He goes, I can't hit him in the knees? He goes, no. I can't grab him by the back of the shoulder pads? He goes, no. He goes, how am I supposed to tackle him? Like, should I just pick him up like a baby and lay him on the ground? Like, but that's where we're going. It's like, how you – I would hate to play football as a defensive person right now. Yeah. And I love defense up until I switched to offense. I loved it. I can't imagine playing defense.
And I don't know how you get a sack. That's even harder yet. Yeah. Like when you get to the quarterback, you work so hard every snap to get to the quarterback. He's still got the ball in his hand.
It's almost like you have to grab him by the wrist and pull him down. Like that's the only spot.
Almost you just say two-hand touch, right?
Yeah.
If you get to him and you can get two hands on him before he releases, we'll call it a sack.
Yeah.
Because if he's got the ball and you hit him and you're like, well, you landed a little too much on him, or you took him over you, but then you flung him, just like, I don't know how a guy gets a sack anymore. It is so hard.
I don't even think referees know. I think at this point in time, they're so waterboarded with rules and regulations that they're throwing the flag on caution, like, oh, that's got to be close.
Yeah, I don't want to miss a call.
Yeah, because
hell, 10 years ago, we didn't even know what a catch was. We're in that whole debacle where what is a catch? Do you have to catch it, run 3 yards out of bounds, place it on the like? What is a catch anymore?
Right.
So the rules are just absolutely crazy. To bring it back around to you in college, are you in touch with any of your college teammates, or do you ever get back down to Badger games or any of that altogether?
Yeah, that's just something that being from Sun Prairie, I had my football guys and then I had my homies, the old Sun Prairie boys.
Exactly.
My roommate, my first 2 years was Paul Gruber.
Okay.
So he and I shared a dorm room together. We were a perfect match. So laid back, so easygoing. And I always tell the story. You know why Paul Gruber was the best left tackle in probably Wisconsin history with Joe Thomas? Because he had stone hands. He came in as a tight end. He could run a 4.69.
Dang,
he was a tight end at 6'5", 240, ran a 4.69 as a tight end, but every time he would cross the middle, it was clank, clank, clank. And he's just like, dude, how are you a tight end? You can't catch a cold. Like, what are you doing? And so they said, all right, never mind. We can't risk that, right? We're going to move you to the left tackle because obviously you're quick. You run a 4.69, right?
Right. Well,
he ran a 4.69 at 270, at 290, at 310.
Are you serious?
Oh, God, yeah. He was 310 by his senior, and he still clocked out at a 4.69 or 4.7 in the combine. He was just a phenomenal athlete. And, I just loved watching him, as he got better and better each year and stuff like that. And he never got hurt. I remember his senior year, I think it might have been, he had a meniscus tear. He did not miss a game.
Really?
He simply got it cut out. They taped him up and put a brace on it, and he played. It was just like he was fun to watch.
And it was a different time. We talked about playing for the guys around you, never wanted to miss a snap. And Bill quoted the thing, you can't make the club in the tub.
Yeah.
And
I've seen that sign actually, and I think it was in our training room actually at the time. It's like, and then I looked at it every day I was in there practically, stuff like. But I didn't really stay close with any of those guys, which was unfortunate because I always had those Sun Prairie friends of mine.
Yeah.
We even lived together. my junior year when you get off, you go off, live on your own kind of thing. I moved in with 3-4 other Sun Prairie guys and the same thing, and so I kind of had that deviation between football and all the other guys and stuff. And when I was there, the guys still came over to the house. We still had parties. We still, had a great time together. But once I graduated, it was, they went their own way. I went my own way. And, again, you look back and you kind of regret it. It's like, geez, it was good times with a lot of those guys during that stretch and just didn't stay in touch.
Exactly. And it's tough. Like, life is life. We're going through it where we all have kids that are growing up and just like you've gone through. And there's guys like Joe and I that have stayed close over the years, but we had times where we hadn't talked in forever. And, yeah, it's probably down to just a handful of guys at this point for us. It's like those, and it's basically the guys that we lived with. I think Joe and I lived together, obviously the 217, and then Dave would be the other one, and Casey'd probably be the last guy in the group. And then you see the guys, we try and get down to games every once in a while. You see the guys, but back to the can't make the club in the tub during the Gary Anderson era. So after us, where I felt like, we peaked at Wisconsin, then when after Bielema, Gary Anderson came in, I remember Ross Kalaji was working he was the head strength coach or assistant strength coach. And I went down there once. I was like, what's going on with the program? It was just like, we were just losing games we shouldn't lose. And there was a window. I don't know if it was like this when you were there, but from the weight room to the training room, there was a window that you could see into the training room.
Yeah, not at all.
Ross goes, when we're lifting, there's more guys in the training room looking at us lifting than there are guys lifting. Where with us, like we've talked early on in the show when it came to injuries about stealing ice, like after hours when nobody's there, or like coming in early to like heat up in the hot tub, like to basically medicate yourself without anybody knowing.
You didn't want the trainers to know.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Like unless you can't walk, then you go see the trainer. If you could figure it out on your own, where these kids, I don't know. I keep using the word, it's a different generation than what we were used to.
Yeah, out of curiosity, do you remember what your weight and height was in college? Because, actually, you were on defense first, and then you were offense. Obviously, Bill partook in being a defensive lineman, and then they asked him to gain weight, and with a smile on his face, I
think they asked him to gain 30 pounds in 3 months, and I looked around like, no problem. I think I gained 40 pounds in 3 months.
I can handle that job.
Well, my joke as a D lineman before you go was these guys, because I was going up against guys like Joe, our buddy Dave, our buddy Casey, and their joke was I had a good bull rush. Like I'm short, I'm squatty, got the hips. But they go, my spin move, it would start in the morning practice, and I get all the way around by the afternoon practice.
Well, that's a quick one. There you go.
Exactly. So
really
they're like, you're coming to offense.
I think I came in at 6'5", 260, 265.
That's not bad.
Because I just know like during the basketball season I got down to about 250. Because obviously made me more mobile on the court and playing, that kind of stuff. And then in the spring, I started adding more of it back on. So I think I came in about 260, 265. But boy, was it hard to put weight on for me. Paulie and I used to sit in the dorm room and we'd call it Pizza Pit on Monday night and say, 2 larges, bring them over. And then we'd do it again on Thursday night. 2 larges, bring them over. And this was after the training table where you had a feast, right? But we just both he and I had to add weight.
Right.
And so we were constantly calling a Pizza Pit for bring them over. We need more.
I did not have that problem.
I was just going to say, Dave, I liked you until you made that comment right there. That it's hard to put on weight. Joe and I look at somebody else eating a pizza and we gain about 3 pounds.
Right now, not a problem. Absolutely. I mean, isn't that scary? It's just amazing how easy it is now.
Yeah.
But back then it was a bit of, and that was also, if you guys think back, Chris, that was really the start of how important weight training and nutrition was the early 80s. That's when it kind of finally hit everybody and started to take off. There wasn't a whole lot of lifting before that. It was kind of like, we lift some and stuff like that, but it was just all kind of natural. Yeah. Well, all of a sudden, in the early 80s, it was like, no, you need to lift 4 to 5 days a week. You need to put mass on. You need to put size on, and stuff like that. And that's kind of where we went into, and that's how I was able to get up to about, 290, I think is the most I ever weighed, 285, 290. And, by the time I was a senior, but, again, it was just kind of slowly but surely. But, again, now you can go down, you can watch a kid walk into Wisconsin be 270 by the time, in the fall, by the time spring ball is done, he's 300, he's 305.
Yeah.
And we just didn't know how to do that back then. So.
Did you have a strength coach at Wisconsin when you were there?
Yes, and I wish I could remember his name. I want to say it was Moran, something like that. He wasn't any taller than about 5'8", 5'9", but he was like a bodybuilder type. And so, he was just short and stocky and just, oh my God, he was a brick wall. And he really motivated. I mean, he was excellent at that. We actually did Saturday morning squat sessions after the season. We were like, and I think the biggest part of that was to keep you out of the bars late Friday night, right? At least limit you to one night. Because we did Saturday morning, 6 a.m. We all come in as linemen. This was strictly linemen, of course. So the linemen would come in there, and then it was like, all right, let's see who's putting 550 up. Let's see who's putting 600 up. Let's see, Paul puts up freaking 700 by the time he left there. But, it was just, again, but we had bodysuits. Did you guys wear the lifting bodysuits?
No.
Oh, yeah. See, big difference. We had those tight lifting suits.
Like
that
weighted?
You
saying weighted or rubber?
No, not weighted. They were just like a rubber, where you had to actually have guys help you get the suit on.
I know what you're talking about.
Powerlifting suits, yes.
They do them
there
right
you
now.
go.
Yep.
And our lifting coach was big into those and sold us all those things.
Yeah.
And so we were wearing those, and we were wearing straps around our knees.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were walking there like could hardly move.
Right.
Get underneath the rack, and we were spring loaded. I mean, by the time you got down to the bottom, it was like you had no place. You had to go up because everything was so freaking tight. It was like you're going up, so you're going to get this. So don't worry, So it's spring and load you back up, and that was Saturday mornings, which was again ACD cranking at 6 a.m. on volume 10. I mean, it was a lot of energy for a Saturday morning at 6, and then you get done with the workout, you go home, pass out for the next 2-3 hours, get your nap in to enjoy it, get ready for the next night. But yeah, that was something too.
I see. I think that we could have played in the Indies, Bill. I think we would have fit right in there.
Oh,
I really do.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, too, linemen are linemen.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
no matter what.
I think the other position groups, that's where it's going to be a challenge. But I think O-lineman, an O-lineman as soon as you see him. Like I've said to Joe, the different teams I was on, I even broke it down from the Big Ten Conference, the way our character was sort of Wisconsin, where I went to a new NFL team. I could pick out right away, like, he's Big Ten, he's Big Ten. You could just tell it's a different persona, different attitude. But linemen, I don't know, linemen just stick together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Anytime you go out and do something, who are you going to do it with?
Yeah.
Your buddies on the O-line. I mean, that's just because you spend so much time together between all the lifting and the meetings and practice. And it becomes your family.
We even joked about early on in our career, throughout our whole career, we always had tests that our O-line coach would give us. What was it? The day before the game, we had to turn them in. The night after meetings, we had to turn it in. And it was basically an offense and defense would have a play, and you'd have to draw the whole play up. And the way we describe it, especially for younger players, is by the end of our career, I could tell you if that safety's on the hash mark, like I'm looking at this, looking at that. Mm-hmm. At the beginning of our career in 97, I'd be like, okay, power. I'm pulling this way. I'm getting that linebacker.
Yeah. I know what I do.
No, right guard. What are you doing on the back side?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're literally going to everybody. Yeah. We're like back before cell phones. We're calling other guys' apartments, being like, "Hey, did you fill your test out yet? What are you doing here?" Like Casey was our center, so like we'd always ask Casey, like, "What call are you making on this? Like, who's the mic? How do you know?" Yeah. Like, especially you face a nickel defense. There's 4 linebackers. Which one are you calling the mic? It's easy when there's 3. It's the guy in the middle.
Well, when you were a freshman or something, you wanted to keep your world small.
Exactly.
Yes. What do I have to do?
Yep,
what do I do on this play to be successful? I don't care what everybody else does as long as I do my job. I just don't want to get my butt chewed out here. Exactly. What do I have to do? Okay, good. Yeah.
100%.
Well, Dave, I can't thank you enough for coming in. I thought this was a blast. Just hearing some of your stories, I think it was phenomenal. And again, we've been friends for a while, and this was really kind of cool for us to be able to come in. I mean, we talk football when we see each other all the time. And then for people to be able to hear some of those stories, I think is phenomenal. And the best part is Bill was shut down.
That's respect.
Done.
Respect. I push the respect.
Respect your elders. I like that. Exactly. Respect your elders. Thank you.
Somebody
Thank
here
you.
To speak. And
absolutely.
Well, I'll tell you what. I was a little nervous. Just wondering if I could remember things. I mean, it's been 40 years,
right?
And to try to reflect back. And I was telling my wife this left, I was like, I got to have notes or something because I don't know if I'm going to remember anything. But you're right. When you sit down with you two and you start bringing up, your era, which again was only 10 years difference.
Right.
You guys came in at 10 years after I walked out the door. Mm-hmm. That's not much.
Right.
That's what's fun about it. And just sit back and you start telling stories and things just start flooding back into memories. All those things that you thought I forgot about, they come back, and it's just fun to talk about you guys. No doubt about it.
100% truth. Well, thank you very much. It's been an honor. It's been fun, and stay tuned next week for another episode of 217 South Mills.
And, of course, we're going to thank our sponsor, Cabin Coffee Altoona, located at 2922 Meadowlark Lane in Altoona, Wisconsin.
As well as Pizza Del Rey. Thank you for listening to Joe and I today. We hope you enjoyed your time with us. If you like what you heard, please give 217 South Mills a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. Go tell your friends about us. Like and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok, and YouTube.
I'd like to thank Cabin Coffee Altoona for sponsoring us. Everything is always better at the cabin. See you next time. And remember, folks, Red has to run.